On Thursday, the 27th of April 2017, the bipartisan Congressional Ahmadiyya Muslim Caucus held a congressional briefing in the U.S. Capitol building on the persecution of Ahmadi Muslims in Pakistan and Algeria. Entitled Recent Trends and Developments in Global Persecution of Ahmadi Muslims, the event drew dozens of attendees, including representatives from the U.S. Congress, the U.S. State Department, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, NGOs, and media. 5 members of Congress spoke at the briefing, which included statements by human rights advocate Farahnaz Isfahani, U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom Chairman Reverend Thomas Reese, and members of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. U.S. Representative Peter King of New York, who is the Republican co-chair of the Congressional Ahmadiyya Muslim Caucus, had the following to say.
I feel it a great privilege to be co-chairman of the caucus in the Congress. It's a bipartisan issue. We don't, as Congressman Johnson knows, we don't agree on everything in the Congress, but this is one issue where there is really a unanimity. The fact in Pakistan, where you're not allowed the full exercise of your rights. My understanding is that even to vote, you have to say you're not Muslim, declare yourself a non-Muslim. That's the type of religious intolerance that really cannot be accepted.
Members of Congress were keenly aware of and deeply troubled by persecution of Ahmadis in both Pakistan and Algeria. U.S. Representative Jackie Speier of California, who is the Democratic co-chair of the caucus, said the following.
And we know fully well that religious freedom is enshrined in our Constitution. We believe passionately about protecting religious freedom in this country. It's important for us to draw attention to the fact that recently in Algeria, there has been an intensive legal and media campaign against the Ahmadiyya population there. So much so that it resulted in the arrest of the National Ahmadiyya president, Mr. Mohammed Fali, to a student who was jailed in Algeria for charges that he was supporting terrorism because he posted a video exposing the brutality of ISIS. In Pakistan, as we know, the legal discrimination against the Ahmadiyya community is gross. The fact that you cannot vote in Pakistan unless you denounce your faith is repugnant to us, and I'm sure is repugnant to you. And last December, at the Ahmadiyya headquarter office in Rabwa, it was raided by armed members of the Punjab province police. So you are, as a religious group in many countries outside of the United States, being challenged in your faith. And it's incumbent on those of us in Congress to speak up about these violations.
Farahnaz Isfahani, former member of the National Assembly of Pakistan and author of Purifying the Land of the Pure, highlighted the plight of 2 long-standing prisoners of conscience in her statement.
One of the most recent cases of persecution against Ahmadis relates to the arrest, detention, and sentencing of Mr. Abdul Shakur, an 80-year-old optician, for propagating the Ahmadiyya faith. So on December 2, 2015, Punjab government's counter-terrorism department, accompanied by Pakistan's elite force, raided a symbol bookstore owned by Abdul Shakur and arrested him for selling Ahmadiyya literature. He was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment under Penal Code Section 298C and 3 years under the Anti-Terrorism Act. Blasphemy and terrorism charges have also been brought against Mr. Tahir Mehdi, the editor of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community's daily newspaper, Al-Fazl, a 102-year-old publication. In order to register and vote in Pakistan, each citizen must complete a form stating his or her religious affiliation. Ahmadi Muslims must declare that they are not Muslim on this form in order to vote. As a result, hundreds of thousands of Ahmadi Muslims, if not far greater, are disenfranchised. And I would beseech all of you to get behind this. The Ahmadiyya community must be allowed to vote. It is a human right.
Other members of Congress spoke out forcefully for religious freedom.
I think that it's time now for human beings to wake up and start appreciating all of our differences and respecting our differences and allowing each one of us to live in peace and harmony.
We can assure you that we will be wedded around the need for enhanced action and response by a democratic nation who holds as one of its special tenets is the freedom of religion, to live your religion, to worship your religion, to honor your religion, to teach your religion, to spread the faith of your family members, and to honor your religion. And so I'm delighted of this conference, and I look forward to continuing to work with all of you to uphold and pride ourselves in the fact that cannot be disputed. Human rights is religious rights, and religious rights are human rights.
We know that you support a peaceful Islam that is community-focused and thoughtful, and we know that we can do this together. So I want to thank you for continuing to open up your facilities, to open up your hearts, and to educate us on the importance of supporting these efforts.
USERF Chairman Reverend Rees expressed deep concerns over the religious discrimination of Ahmadi Muslims.
USERF's 2017 annual report, which we actually released yesterday, makes clear our deep concern about religious prisoners of conscience and solidarity with them. While quiet diplomacy has a key role to play, public inattention often leads to more persecution, not to more freedom. In fact, silence can signal a lack of interest and therefore a license to oppress. Thus, the importance of today's focus on the Ahmadi prisoners of conscience, a focus which turns inevitably to Pakistan. Tahir Mahdi is a printer and a publisher of the daily Al-Fanzal, a 102-year-old Ahmadiyya publication. He has been detained for publishing Quranic verses in Ahmadiyya publications. Sadly, there are other Ahmadi prisoners of conscience. Some we know about, others we don't. Violations of religious freedom affect real people. We must never forget that it is individuals who suffer the often devastating consequences of unjust laws and practices. We want them to know that they are not forgotten. We want to highlight the laws, policies, and practices that led to their imprisonment, and we want to hold their government accountable. Ultimately, we want prisoners of conscience to be freed and want to work with you to help ensure that they are.
Members of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community outlined in detail the persecution of Ahmadis in Pakistan and Algeria. After the speakers made their statements, there was a Q&A session with the panel, wherein it was noted both Pakistan and Algeria will be assessed during this year's Universal Periodic Review by the United Nations Human Rights Council. After the event, guests expressed their appreciation and, along with members of Congress, vowed to work towards ending religious persecution and promoting human rights universally. Sania Ahmed, MTA News, USA.